I mean, the Billy Barty stories, you appreciated, didn't you?
I did. Little People of America, the founder of Little People of America, excellent in Willow and in UHF. Billy Barty, American treasure.
Put Billy Barty in the hall. I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
And welcome back to another edition of Politics Unplugged, the podcast. I am joined today by Paul Bentz from High Ground Incorporated, a local public affairs firm who conducted a poll with Arizona's Family. Arizona's Family commissioned the poll in partnership with High Ground, and he's joining us today to break down the numbers, particularly with the presidential race in Arizona, the Senate race in Arizona, and the two big propositions on the ballot on abortion and border security. Paul, thank you very much for coming back.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's start with obviously the presidential race top line numbers here. Harris up 2 points over Donald Trump. We start early voting this week, and basically statistical dead heat because it's well within the margin of error, which is 4 points.
Absolutely. We're at a dead heat right now. It's anybody's game. We did a poll about a month ago that had Harris up by 3, so it's definitely narrowing. And I think that's not surprising for folks that have been following it for a while. This has been a pretty wild election cycle so far. I mean, we've had it seems to change every week, whether it's the assassination attempt to Biden dropping out to a disastrous debate performance to, I mean, everything every week seems to be very different. And, Arizona seems to be the epicenter of sort of the discussion. And I think the road to the White House goes through Arizona, which is why it's sort of interesting that I feel like compared to 2020, we've got a lot less, rallies. It seems to be a little bit quieter in the state, despite it being so close.
I got to say, tell you too, I don't want to deviate from like the polling numbers, but it also felt like after Labor Day, it was kind of anticlimactic. We went through such a tumultuous summer with that assassination attempt, with Joe Biden dropping out, with the ascension of Kamala Harris, that it felt like after, when people are supposed to be paying attention to politics, it was almost anticlimactic. I mean, hell, I remember Colin and I every week coming into this podcast booth just exhausted, going, it's in another historic week.
Right.
Because, I mean, has it felt like that way to you?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is because early voting starts in October for Arizona, you'd think by now, if somebody was going the October surprise, as it were, it needs to happen now.
And what could surprise us at this point?
Right. Not very much. I mean, that's why I think it's so close. I mean, things that I'm seeing in the presidential numbers, number one, certainly it appears like the efforts to attack Harris to independents seems to be working. Trump was trailing in the past survey among independents. He's holding a narrow lead, 46-41 among the independent, unaffiliated others, no party, no labels, green, libertarian. They're leaning towards Trump right now. Mm-hmm. But despite that, he's got this leakage among Republicans. About 12 points worth of Republicans are not picking him. So that, the efforts that we see with Jeff Flake, Mitt Romney and others, I think that's having an effect, giving Republicans a permission to not vote for Trump, but even more so that they can't just sit this one out. They have to vote for Harris. It seems to be having an effect, at least on these numbers. Yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that, because a couple of the key points in the data when you look into the crosstabs there was the Trump lead with the unaffiliated voters, independent voters, whatnot. And also that you just mentioned that Harris was grabbing 12.7 or almost 13%, I think, of Republicans were crossing over when Trump was getting less than 2%. Why do you think that is? I mean, who are these 12, 13% of Republicans that are crossing over?
Well, 12-2 is a big number. The D-backs could have used one more of those to make the playoffs. But the bigger thing here is generally when we do this type of polling, partisan races, we'll see a little bit of crossover, but it's pretty much even, like let's 6 points in each direction or so. And so what we're really seeing is a very different snapshot here with 12 points of Republicans going to Harris versus only 2 points worth of Democrats. The Democrats are are much more solidified. They've circled the wagons. They are much more in sync on what they want to do, whereas they're losing Republicans. I think it's some of the more moderate-leaning Republicans. It's some of the McCain Republicans. It's some of the folks that have decided that they don't want the MAGA strategy. They're probably still pretty fiscal conservative, and down ballot, they're going to vote for Republicans. But at the top of the ticket, they have not wanted to support Trump in this cycle, Carrie Lake in this cycle, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But also in 2022, they're the folks that really delivered the state to Mark Kelly, to Katie Hobbs, and to Adrian Fontes. Those folks aren't messing around with these MAGA Republicans anymore. They don't. You know, Carrie Lake told them to get the hell out, and that's what they did.
Yeah, okay. It's like, you don't need to tell me twice.
Right.
But also another key demographic, key block of voters is that 65 and older voter, evenly split in this presidential race, which was shocking when you consider, if you look back over time, particularly over my career covering politics, your career in politics. That is a Republican block of voters. Not only Republican, reliably and strongly leans for Republican. That is not the case with that 48% apiece in this poll.
Consistently so. In fact, you know, Arizona's got a large number of retirement communities. Our demographic trends a little bit older. Over half of our electorate is over the age of 55, a significant portion over the age of 65. They've been the base, consistent base for Republicans for a long, long time. It used to be Republicans could go to the retirement communities. Sheriff Joe used to do this. You know, he'd run up the score in Sun City and Leisure World and call it good. I mean, for many, many years, Republicans could win Maricopa County simply by just talking to the retirement communities alone. And that's no longer the case based on our audience growth. But the other thing is, Republicans have taken advantage of them, and I think it's to their disadvantage. What we're seeing now is a split right now among the 65 and older. And if Democrats can be competitive in that audience, it really takes away a big built-in advantage that Republicans had for many, many years.
It's funny you bring up Arpaio. I mean, you know, I've compared to what we've seen with Trump to Arpaio on a national scale for a long time. I'm not the only one. You know, so I have to ask, this is, you know, Trump, it's the third time he's represented the party, the top of the ticket. Do you sense, you know, looking at data like this, there could be somewhat of a Trump fatigue that he has to work against if he wants to win Arizona and win the presidency again? Yeah,
part of it is the degradation of sort of his reputation and celebrity. I mean, one of the things that helped Arpaio for many, many years is that, you know, the pink underwear, the green baloney, America's Toughest Sheriff, him being on, you know, any of those crime shows nationally and everything. He had this reputation and the celebrity that really sort of translated to the swing audiences. His loyal Republican base stuck with him for a lot of years, and we're seeing that similar approach to Trump. Loyal Republicans are sticking with Trump, but that sort of celebrity background, sort of that tells it like it is. You know, he doesn't take any prisoners. He's going to drain the swamp. He's a rich man that's been very successful. A lot of that is starting to fall off because he consistently talking about the election being stolen, basically requiring Vance to defend the transition of power as being peaceful. Those types of things do not ring true with this swing audience. It just doesn't hit, especially election fraud. In Arizona in particular, after the audit and everything else, and even the audit findings showing that there was not this fraud that people thought, that does not translate. And they need to get past that. They cannot continue to litigate the past if they think they're going to be effective in 2024.
You know, with Arpaio back in the day, again, on a much smaller scale, there was always a good amount of showmanship on that, you know. And again, it got to the point where you saw a lot of more mainstream voters, even Republican voters, who just kind of rolled their eyes. It's like, oh, yeah, the pink underwear, the green baloney, the this or that. Okay. And there was, at the end, I think, you know, Arpaio ended up losing by double digits because of that fatigue. And I was wondering if there was maybe a little bit of that setting into the electorate here.
Maybe, but the other problem is with the Arpaio comparison is that Arpaio always threatened to run for governor, threatened to run for Senate. He had a position, but always threatened to go somewhere higher. Trump is as high as he can go. I don't expect him, if he loses the run for president, to run for mayor of Mar-a-Lago. You know, maybe, but like I think ultimately,
the intergalactic overlord, maybe.
I don't know if there's a place he could go higher than that. But the whole idea is, I do think sort of there's an aura about him. He gets different voters that nobody else can get. That when we look at some of the other races, whether it's 2022 and the MAGA faithful that were the Republican nominees, or even the Senate race, which I know we're going to talk about, those folks don't get the same benefit of the doubt that Trump does. He gets a unique audience that no one else seems to be able to get. And even that unique audience might not be enough in 2024.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's a lesson I think a lot of politicians are learning in a very painful way. That what is good for Donald Trump may not work for you. It's just you can't imitate him. There's something about him. We could do a whole show on why we think that is, but we don't have the time for that, or I don't have much of a desire to do that right now. I'd rather stick with the polling data. But one of those candidates that has been very MAGA, very America first, very Arizona first, Carrie Lake, she is down in your poll double digits.
That's correct. Yeah, she's down 51 to 41, 10-point deficit with 48% definitely Gallego compared to only 34% definitely Lake. She is struggling. She's been affectionately called, or less affectionately called, Trump in a dress. I think she's tried to adopt a lot of the behavior. I said for many years she is not the one trying to cozy up to Trump. She's trying to be Trump. And I think that's run its course. Gallego was given an opportunity to really frame himself early on. He didn't have a primary opponent, and he was able to really talk about himself in a way, about his background, about his upbringing, his military service, his immigrant mother, his blue-collar background. I think all of those things translated to him paint a picture of himself that was very positive. Whereas Lake, I think, came into this race saying, you know me. You've seen me for 2 years, and I don't think she thought it through, or at least her team didn't think through sort of the baggage that had, that she really needed to reintroduce herself. Then she has a less than successful primary run. She wins, but not by as much as people thought. People thought she was going to beat Lamb handily. She did not. And now she's in a race against somebody that's been able to frame himself, and the attacks don't seem to be working. More importantly, though, she's not getting the same amount of support from Republicans that Trump is. Trump's getting 85% of Republicans. Lake is only getting 80%. Trump's getting 46% of independents. Lake's getting less than 40%. She's not getting the same audiences, that same crossover, even if she's doing the same shtick. It's just not working as well for her.
Yeah, and I mentioned this on the TV show. You also appeared on that. Your poll confirmed what I felt kind of in my gut, intuitively, that this was not. There was something different about Carrie Lake in this race. There wasn't the buzz about her. She wasn't the new politician on the scene anymore. And you mentioned shtick, and that's what it became. It became shtick. Like the character didn't evolve. It didn't grow. You go to interview, or somebody goes to interview. It's like, oh yeah, great. You're bashing the media. Gee, that's what we've seen every single time you do this. And when I spoke with you, interviewed you earlier in the week, you said some of the shine had lost. She's lost some of the shine. Maybe could you unpack that? What do you mean by what that means? Maybe unpack that a little bit more.
Sure. First of all, thanks for mentioning the show. We're doing the show and then the podcast. It's sort of like a Marvel crossover event where the characters show up in more than one spot. And not only that, but
universes collide.
Exactly. And one of the criticisms that Marvel often has is that they don't develop their villains very well. That a villain shows up, they have the exact characteristic that the protagonist needs to fight. It's so funny that you look at Ant-Man, the Ant-Man bad guy shrinks. Ant-Man shrinks. It's like almost exactly the bad guy always almost reflects exactly what the superhero needs to fight. And they get criticized all the time for not developing the villain or giving them more. In a lot of ways, not that Lake is a villain per se, but she has not developed or continued to evolve as a character. Very briefly, she talked about being a mama bear and how she was defensive of, these issues. But then she also tried to come in and change her abortion stance, which got her in trouble with
that got her in a lot of trouble.
And people called her out for it. And, seeing that the abortion issue is on the ballot, I think she tried to navigate that. But then the bigger thing, I think the shine that we're talking about here is, she's got these three personas. She's got the persona that she's trying to put out to the public. She's got the persona that she does on social media. And then she's got the persona she does in these media interviews. And the one she said to the public is, I'm trying to make amends with the McCain Republicans and unite the party. And then on social media, she's not following through with that. And then in her media appearances, she's still attacking McCain and talking loyalty to Trump. She's got three different approaches that don't jibe, and that's really, really difficult. If you're not disciplined in your message, one of the first lessons in politics is message discipline. Say the same thing over and over to every audience, and that's what you have to do. Otherwise, someone's going to call you out for the differences that you have. That she's failing that test, and I think it's making her trail behind. And she hasn't done really anything to differentiate herself or remind people that she was in people's living rooms for decades.
But I think, too, to add on to that, because I agree with that, but to add on to that, I think when you start talking about MAGA world, one of the things they always talk about with Trump is authenticity. And when you start talking about your different person to a different group, whatever audience you're in front of, that's going to take a toll. Because we saw this past week the PBS interview with the great Ted Simons over there.
Right.
And he was asking about abortion. And he'd said, look, you stood on this very exact, set, a couple of years ago, and you were very much against abortion. You said it was murder or whatever. I can't forget.
I think she said demonic,
it was demonic,
like Masters did or something.
And all this stuff. And he says, if you really feel that way, how come you're not fighting for a federal abortion ban, on this? And, I think there are people out there that were supporters of hers in the governor's race that are probably asking that same question.
Yeah, and saying she's a phony. The problem
not
is
authentic.
Not authentic. Saying that they liked her because she was so stringent on abortion, and now she's walked away from that. For sacrificing it in favor of some other audiences that she definitely needs that she's not getting either. And so she's not. It's like the Cheesecake Factory menu, right? Like if you're doing too much stuff, right? If you're trying to be everything to everyone, are you really putting out a good product for anyone? The best restaurants have small menus of things that they do well. She's trying to offer up, spaghetti and tacos and, Chinese food, and it's not, it's not working. I mean, and that's the problem is it's a very mixed and muddled message that is leaving her behind. And to that much needed senior vote, she is trailing 50 to 44, 6 points of seniors to a
that is significant.
To a congressman who's from the probably, if not the most progressive, at least the second most progressive district in the state, and a very, very low turnout district. His district is a very low, not a lot of voters vote in that race. He could have had that seat forever. He decides to run for Senate, largely unknown. And 65 and older, that's a perfect audience that he is vulnerable to, and he's winning that audience right now.
Well, again, yeah, I mean, you can't get over that. That block of voters was always reliably Republican, just like young voters, the youngest demographic of voters, always reliably Democratic. But the difference is 65 and older, they freaking show up every election cycle. I mean, they show up for bond elections, man.
Right. They show up for primaries. They show up for off-cycle elections, city elections. They show up for everything.
And young kids, we're all young, and I don't blame them. You can't count on them. Something shiny could pop up on election day, or they forget to fill out there because they're busy. You're young. You're doing a lot of things. So him winning that block of voters in this race is significant, and it's a big problem for Carrie Lake.
Well, absolutely. And what I like to say is there's a base of voters that show up no matter what. A lot of them trend significantly older. And then it comes down to who shows up around them. Yeah. And in a bond election in the off-cycle year, they're the only ones that show up. But then, in a presidential election, you would anticipate more folks sort of show up around them. But they trend, our electorate trends much older. And for him to be winning that audience fairly handily is kind of a surprise. Mm-hmm. But it speaks to her message not translating. One other thing, though, just I want to add is, she did a press conference at Republican Party headquarters, and she had to stand behind a podium that said Trump on it. Imagine how hard that is that you can't get your own logo on the podium for a press conference that you're holding. And that really speaks to the state of the Republican Party. Yep. That, I'm concerned for their, that their down ballot races are going to be challenged as well, because what the Arizona Republican Party was known for many, many years is whoever the top Republican elected official in the state was helped the victory effort. And it was a slate effort to help everyone. to help the local legislative candidates, to help the local county candidates throughout the state. You know, if you've got Trump on your podium and that's it, and it's just about getting Trump elected, you're not going to those areas where they need the most help. You're going to the areas where you can run up the score, the consistently, reliably red areas to try to get, instead of 80% support, to try to get to 90% support. You're not going to the places where the Republicans need the most help.
Well, and again, to add on to that, and we'll get with the polling, we'll move on to the ballot propositions. So the thing I would be concerned about for Trump and his team right now would be the ground game. I think might be underappreciated right now, because it seems to me that the Harris folks, they've got more offices open throughout the state. They've been here longer. It's a different operation on the Republican side than what we've seen with the party in previous elections, and even with Trump in previous election cycles.
Yeah, I think they've outsourced a lot of it to groups like Turning Point. I think they've just said, oh, you've got the organization, and that's questionable whether that impacts their charitable status and everything else. But there's, I don't think they're doing as much of it internally or through the party as they've had in the past. I know a lot of these mailers that are coming out say the Arizona Republican Party on them, but I wonder where that money is coming from, because the party has not been a traditionally successful fundraising apparatus. So who's paying for these mailers? Who's paying for this outreach? Who's paying for voter registration? I think that's all important questions. And that ground game is going to be important. Biden won the state by about 10,000 votes last time. Oh. That's a ground game issue. Mm-hmm. When it's that close, every vote matters. And I just don't know if there's enough juice to squeeze out of these rural spots that they can make up. They got to be competitive in Maricopa County. And I'm just, it does, to this point, I'm not sure if they're really recognizing that or understanding that.
All right, let's move on briefly. Let's talk about the ballot propositions here, the two big ones here. We're talking about the abortion access prop, and we're talking about the Secure the Border Act. No big surprises here. Both of those campaigns are winning very handedly. We kind of expected that. Your poll confirms that. What are you seeing with that? And I don't have the numbers in front of me, so if you could kind of give us the numbers
Sure.
Real quick on the abortion access measure, which would enshrine protections and access to abortion in the state constitution. And then you have the Border Security Act. Again, if you're not familiar with that, it would make it a state crime to cross illegally into Arizona at any point other than a legal point of entry. So that would empower local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration laws.
So Prop 139, the abortion access, which enshrines the right to an abortion in the Constitution, is passing with 58.8, basically 59, almost 60% of the support compared to 26% no. A couple of important numbers, 51% of the electorate giving it a definitely yes. Anything above 55% in the overall total yes, we think is a strong likelihood of passage.
You're almost 60% here.
And we're almost at 60%. Very strong likelihood. The definitely yes is 51 compared to 20% definitely no. It's in a very strong position of passage. Similarly, but different, 314 is at 58.2% yes compared to 24% no. But their definitely yes is 37% compared to 14% definitely no. So there's intensity on the abortion issue because almost 90% of Democrats are in favor of it. The intensity on the immigration issue is almost exclusively on the Republican side, 71% of Republicans support it. What's interesting is in both the independent, unaffiliated, others, the third party of not of the two parties, both overwhelmingly support both issues. So you actually, this is where we see that independents are really issue driven. Mm-hmm. They want to protect abortion, but they also would like to secure the border. They're willing to, that's how these types of items pass. It's how you build winning coalitions in Arizona. There's no one way to build a winning coalition. Mm-hmm. In this case, the abortion issue is built with a winning coalition of vast majority of Democrats, majority of independents, and picking up about 30% of Republicans. The winning coalition for the immigration issue is vast majority of Republicans, a majority of independents, and 30% of Democrats. And both of them end up with about the same thing. Now, that's what's interesting. One of the things that we talked about on the TV show that I think is important to note is that early on, we knew that the immigration issue was going to be on the ballot and that it would likely have a positive impact for Democrats, and enthusiasm among younger Democrats in particular, getting them to show up. That was a bigger deal probably before Biden dropped out. Was, when it was two septuagenarians going head to head, there was not a lot of enthusiasm. I think that was really one of the measures to get more enthusiasm among younger voters. Harris seems to be getting that younger voter enthusiasm, but we are seeing independents show up. Republicans, seeing that, I think, really looked at this immigration issue as an opportunity to create enthusiasm among Republicans. And I think it's worked. Mm-hmm. I think it dovetails nicely with the Republican messaging around criticizing Harris about immigration and the border to make something that they can talk about and focus on where they can be effective. Now, I think it might cancel each other out a little bit. We'll see. But it is interesting to see both of these issues pass, because I think with 13 statewide issues on the ballot, it's likely we'll see more than half of those fail. So these are two that are likely to pass, though.
And also, before we wrap, too, I also do want to mention that the border initiative is dependent upon the Supreme Court giving the thumbs up to a Texas law that would do a similar thing. That is wrapped up in litigation right now. And the language on that ballot initiative says this only becomes effective if the high court of the land says it's okay.
Right. There's certainly a few more caveats. It'll be challenged. Any sort of these immigration issues definitely usually get some sort of challenge after the fact. But, as we get near the end here, one of the things about just polling in general, when we look at these ballot initiatives, when we look at these presidential and Senate race, polling is a snapshot in time to give us an understanding. And we do our very best to ensure that it's unbiased and reflective of the audience. Just because the numbers don't come out the way that you think they ought to, doesn't mean that we're trying to bias the results. It is, incumbent upon me to do my very best to try to give you accurate numbers. Yeah. And it gets a bad rap because you look at national polls where they try to predict a presidential race by doing a national survey. Well, we have a little thing called the Electoral College. Yeah. And so you got to look state by state. That's why we look at Arizona numbers. And what we see in the Arizona numbers is pretty consistent, and we've got good Arizona pollsters that have given that information. So, this doesn't mean that tomorrow that the election's going to go this way. We still have 30-plus days in the election. But right now, going into early voting, this is what we're seeing. And the initiatives that we just talked about, I think are both very likely to pass at this point, barring some sort of pretty significant change.
All right, I think we'll have to wrap it up there. The Arizona's family will let you go. You've done been on TV a lot here. Done a lot with the fam. So I want to I appreciate you stopping by here, explaining all this, and we'll be back here after the break with Colin and his political pick of the week, coming off vacation. I can't wait to hear it. And welcome back to the second half of the Politics Unplugged podcast. As always, joined by producer extraordinaire Colin Stanton, back from vacation. And before we get into what you did on vacation, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
I do want to get the political play, or in this case this week, plays of the week. You've got some pretty interesting news stories here you want to bring up.
No, I had three and was debating which one to bring up. You said bring up all of them. So here we go. One, tied to the debate. The New York Times had an opinion piece that said J.D. Vance's dominant appearance in the debate shows why he was the right pick to be Trump's running mate. Mm-hmm. And that piece dropped about a half hour into the debate. And if you look at the URL, you can see it was from the previous Wednesday. It would appear they had written, the person who wrote the opinion piece wrote it a week before the debate, talking about how dominant J.D. Vance was in the debate, and then they made it live about a half hour in.
Yeah, that's some bullshit.
That's the New York Times.
That is some bullshit.
Yeah.
Also, too, we were making fun of that night too. Didn't they have a news story after that debate that dropped? It said, fiery or tense debate.
It was tense. And I believe it was tense.
I was like, what was? There
I
was
did not
nothing.
See that debate.
There was not much tense at all in that debate. It was mostly
polite.
civil.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the surprise of the night.
Yeah. The phrase of the night was, I actually agree with.
So I had no idea your child was involved with that. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Not a lot of tension.
No. And
they didn't get to use fiery. They love fiery.
Fuck. I think Politico had maybe the best immediate headline was it's called the debate Midwestern Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah, and being from the Midwest, a Midwest kid, I would agree with that. You know, you had Ohio v. Minnesota there, so
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah. All right, number 2, the new thing that's popping up in Trump's stump speeches. He says that Kamala Harris has created a phone app for the cartels. Although he says, he prefaces this by no one actually knows what a phone app is. No one's heard of a phone app. No one knows what it is. But she has created a phone app, and how it works is the cartels, they call the phone app to find out where they're supposed to be dropping off the migrants at the border.
They call
call the phone app. The cartels call the Kamala Harris phone app to find out where they're supposed to drop the migrants. He says it's absolutely unbelievable was his phrasing, which yes.
I mean,
that is actually unbelievable. Yes.
No, it is unbelievable. Totally unbelievable because it's not happening.
No, it's not.
Wait. We've got to preface it. There's no evidence.
There's no evidence
of this. Actually,
this controversial claim.
Yeah, of this controversial claim that this is actually,
the
in
cartel
fact,
app created by Kamala Harris in her spare time.
Well, I mean, the other thing too, do you see? Trump was claiming that the Biden administration wasn't providing federal disaster relief to hurricane victims.
Yeah, and I believe he said that the governor of Georgia couldn't even reach him.
Yeah,
which came a day after the governor of Georgia detailed his lengthy conversation with President Biden that ended with President Biden giving him the direct line to him and saying, please, if you need anything, call me directly.
Good God, man. Why do you need to do that?
Yeah. By all accounts, the relief effort has been pretty solid, and to try and politicize it in a way that can be really harmful. Because, not to puff up something on Twitter, but there was a running Twitter thing that was trending about, it said do not comply, and it was mostly people saying, look, they're telling you not to fly drones in the relief areas. Do not comply. They're trying to hide what they're doing. It's like, no, you can't fly aircrafts when there are drones up. If someone's trying to fly, if someone's got a helicopter as part of the relief effort, that thing's grounded if there's a drone in the air. I mean, they can do a lot. Have you seen what a bird can do to a plane? Yeah, it's not good. No, it's not good. All right, number 3, the state school superintendent in Oklahoma. Oh boy, has put out a contract to purchase 55 or open to bids. Contract for 55,000 Bibles that he wants to put in every classroom in Oklahoma. And the stipulation is that the Bible must contain the Old Testament and the New Testament, plus the Pledge of Allegiance and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And the chief Bible distributor, who has 2,900 different Bibles available, doesn't have any that fit that description, which is a fairly odd. Oh, and it has to be either leather or faux leather binding. I bet you there's somebody who does have Bibles that fit that description. Well, funny you should say that. Yes. The Bible that does fit that description is the Lee Greenwood God Bless the USA Bible, which is better known as the Trump Bible because it's endorsed by Trump and he gets a cut of the money. Oh, boy. And these Bibles are $60 a piece. You can get a paperback Bible through that distributor I mentioned for $2.99. But this stipulation, the faux leather, sort of narrows it, including the Pledge of Allegiance. Your typical Bible doesn't really have the Pledge of Allegiance in it. Oh my! So that narrows it down to the Lee Greenwood God Bless the USA Bible. Wow! Or the Trump Bible, if you prefer. Wow! Yeah. Look, this is my shocked face. Yeah. Somehow Trump is getting a cut out of this. Yeah, I mean the cost for those Bibles would be over $3 million, and yes, he does get a piece of the Bible, which I believe is sold through his website. Yeah. Oh, convenient. Yeah. Yeah. There's amazing foresight from Lee Greenwood and the organization to create a Bible that would serve the specific needs
I don't even.
State of Oklahoma.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
That wouldn't get us in trouble.
No,
That's
we'll
just
leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
Anything on the polls?
No. It's mostly the polls are interesting. I am thankful. I am happy that the Arizona's family did invest in some polling out there and partnered with High Ground about this. But I think mostly it confirmed what we kind of knew.
Yeah,
it's a close race.
It's a close race. Yes, for president.
For president, yeah.
The most interesting thing to me was the age breakdown because it was surprising to see. I had assumed, and I think a lot of people did, that it was the older you were, the more likely you were to be a Trump supporter.
Not the case.
And that's not the case. The real core of the Trump support, and I think to a lesser extent the Lake support as well, it's Gen X and like younger baby boomers. It's 50 to 64.
Mm-hmm.
That swings dramatically in favor of Trump. But you go 65 and older, and that's an even split for Trump, and it breaks for Gallego in the Senate race.
Yeah. That was significant. I think also too significant was the party crossover. Yeah. With on Harris and in the Lake poll. We'll talk about that in a second. But in the Lake poll, with 12% of Republicans voting for the Democrat. Yeah. In those races. And that's a significant problem. It's less of a problem for Trump because he's doing so much better with independents and whatnot.
Right. In Lake's case, when the independents aren't breaking for her.
And she's losing that key 65 and older block, which is a big freaking deal.
It's pretty remarkable.
With her, So, I would like to add on, if I can, what I think my political play of the week would be. I have got to give a big shout out to Ted Simons over at PBS.
Yes.
For the way he handled his interview with Carrie Lake. Yeah. When you go into an interview with Carrie Lake, she is going to, for lack of a better term, attack the reporter. Yeah. Make claims against the reporter. And I think Ted, just a real professional. I've known him for a while. Really, really even-handed, even keel kind of guy. Took all of it in stride and, did a fantastic job conducting himself in that interview. There was a key moment at what point when, Carrie Lake was claiming that Ted Simons and, and Ruben Gallego and Harris all want this. And, and Ted says, stop saying that. That's not true. All I'm doing is asking you to explain yourself. And he says, as a U.S. Senator, you better be able to explain yourself. I thought that was really great. Yeah. Lake responded by saying, well, thanks for the lecture, Ted. And Ted says, you betcha. Yeah. Great exchange.
I mean, I realize at this point a huge percentage of her brand is just attacking whoever's holding a microphone in front of her. That's what she does. She attacks the media. She'll attack anyone in the media. Mm-hmm. And maybe that'll work in some cases. Maybe that'll work with political reporters, some people. Others, man, she'll do it to anyone. Well, and if you're going to do that to Ted Simons on a PBS audience, I don't think anyone's looking at Ted Simons and seeing a rabid, raging, Marxist attack dog Marxist. They're not, and he's not. He's great at what he does.
He really
is. Really good at the interviews, debate stuff. He's very, very good and very fair and very patient. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to go after him, you're probably not going to come out of it looking very good.
No. And that's the thing, with her, she don't yell back at her. You can if you want. Yeah. It's not going to work out well for you. It works out well for her because she can take that and then go raise money off of it or go make you post it on social media with her own take on it. Yeah. And that's been kind of the status quo for her for several years now. Again, like what we got into with Paul. I mean, if you're looking at this as the political TV show, is this season 2 or season 3? I mean, season 2, right? Season 1 was the governor race. Season 2 of the Carrie Lake story, there's no character development.
No. No, it's the same, and it doesn't sell like it did last time.
No, except
people are tired of it.
No, there's some changes, but not development. Like now, she's so open to the states that's deciding abortion for themselves. When before abortion was demonic.
Yes.
So okay, but as far as actual growth,
she'll open herself up to the demonic. If the states want to be demonic, let the states be demonic.
Let them. Like we were mentioning, beforehand, like you were mentioning what's going on in Oklahoma. I was like, isn't that the state with the satanic monument?
Well, yes. Yes. I suspect that the school superintendent is not fond of the satanic monument.
But it's there.
But it's there.
Boy, is it there.
Yeah.
Oh my God! But again, another double-digit lead for Gallego. Look, I've seen the polling range from as high as 15 with a Fox
15,
News poll.
Yeah.
More recently, there was a poll. I forget who did it. It showed Gallego up 13 points. But I also saw one on the 538 polling list that had Rubin only up 4. So it's a bit of a swing in a margin. So, but Paul in High Ground's poll kind of reaffirms that this is a lead outside the margin of error as we head into the part of the campaign where people start actually casting ballots.
Yeah, and I think the margin of error was around 4%.
4%
in the poll. Yeah, and guy goes up 10. So that is
outside the margin.
That is, in fact, outside the
margin of error.
It's well outside.
And what was it? One of our data reporters and producers here was like tweeting about the poll and or Xing about the poll. And one of the responses from people who weren't happy with the results were, what was it? It was like, how can this be accurate? I wasn't polled.
Yeah. That's true.
Oh, boy.
That's true. That is how polls work.
It's exactly how polls work. They poll everybody.
Elections, everyone.
Oh, yes.
Everyone gets to vote.
Everybody gets polled on elections, yes.
Polls, smaller sample size. That is correct. Guy on Twitter, who is probably in St. Petersburg. You weren't polled. No. So, they can save all those comments in the cesspool of Instagram comments there.
Yeah. So, let's start wrapping this up, man. I think I want to hear about your vacation. Fascinating. Yeah. You went to a really fascinating place out by Palm Springs.
Yeah. Drove down to Pappy and Harriet's, the Western Saloon in Pioneer Town.
We've all been there. Right?
It's about 40 minutes north of Palm Springs. And if you're familiar with the geography of Palm Springs, there's not a goddamn thing that's 40 minutes
north. I was going to say probably
Palm Springs.
Didn't have to worry a lot about traffic.
No, well, there's a highway that goes north there and then curves east and goes through Joshua Tree and goes to 29 Palms. And it's not all that heavily traveled. And then at some point on that, you get off and you go 4 miles north on this little weaving road up that goes like over a mountain. You're in the middle of nowhere, and the saloon has concerts, and they get. I mean, I was there to see Father John Misty, who was fantastic and amazing. It was a great show. But I mean, like, they have Patti Smith coming this month. They have Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth. Los Lobos is doing a few shows there, and it's just this little Western saloon in this Old West town in the absolute middle of nowhere. Not too far from Joshua Tree.
That sounds fantastic.
It was great. It was outside. I guess they have some performances are inside, but this was outside in the back area, in the area that holds like, I think it said 850 people.
So people not familiar with Father John Misty, what's the one song or album that they should listen to introduce themselves?
Oh boy, that's tricky. The one song people might know is called Real Love Baby, which is so non-representative of his body of work that he said he used to be fairly contradicted about playing it. But he figured then it started making him a ton of money and he felt better about playing it. He's got a song on his last album called Goodbye, Mr. Blue. that's about a dying cat. And it sounds, to me, he's not really a Western artist, but it sounds like a classic Glenn Campbell ballad to me.
Okay.
But he's singing about a dying cat and how it seems to be the end of his relationship with said owner.
No.
The dying cat. But it's great. It's a beautiful, well done song. Yeah, outside of that, he's got a new album coming out next month. He played stuff from that. Sounds fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He's got an album called God's Favorite Customer. He's got a song called Mr. Tillman, which is, if you want sort of some sense, and that's his real name. His name is Josh Tillman.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Tillman is his conversation with a hotel concierge who's listing all of the bills he accrued the last time he was there and asking him, could you please, if you sleep out on the balcony, could you not drag the mattress out in the rain this time? And Tillman has a bit of a drug image. So it's some of his, the new album has a song called Josh Tillman and the Accidental Dose,
Mm-hmm.
which is about him being in some girl's house and then her clown painting on the wall starts talking to him. I will say the show, and I was not partaking. This show is the first time I've ever had an opening act say, I got 2 more songs, so if you got them, probably take them now, and they'll probably be hitting right about the time that Josh comes on. I assume you're all veterans of the process. Which got a chuckle and didn't seem to get people actually dosing.
But that wasn't the only thing.
That wasn't it. Yeah. So
on your vacay.
Yeah. So the next day, drove over to visit my folks in Orange County and saw Paul Weller at the House
so
of Blues in Anaheim, and it was amazing. And I've been a Paul Weller fan for literally well over 40 years. Mm-hmm. He started out with the Jam and then the Style Council, and has been solo. He hardly ever plays here. He hadn't played in the U.S. for 7 years before doing this run of shows.
He gives very little F's about.
He doesn't. He does not care about breaking the U.S. market. He never has. I looked it up, and it appears the last time he played in Phoenix was in the 70s when the Jam played at the Celebrity Theater as an opening act for, I believe, Blue Oyster Cult. Which, if you're familiar with the Jam, which was sort of British punk, they weren't all that punk, but they were like,
that would have been a nice juxtaposition.
It would
as
have.
They say.
Maybe
not as abrasive as Jimi Hendrix opening for the Monkees,
but it's a weird combo.
Yeah, it's a weird combo.
And literally, he hasn't played Phoenix since then.
Wow.
So I was very happy to drive over to LA and get a chance to see him, and I was right up at the front. He played a few old Jam songs. He mostly stuck to his stuff. Played a lot of the Style Council.
That's great
stuff, and it was an absolutely amazing show.
Yeah.
It's very cool to be able to see someone that you've been a fan of for, like I said, well over 40 years, and had never seen him.
Well, it's nice. It's nice too, the music snobs that we are. It's also nice. A lot of the folks we follow for a long time, they're not people who sell out arenas. They're not they're people you see them in a club. They're right there.
Yeah,
and
that's House of Blues, which is a great venue.
That's so freaking cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. It beats the hell out of the arena concert experience.
Oh, I hate the arena concert. Yeah. I don't know why people go to those.
Yeah,
wait, you know why? Because they love it when somebody spills beer down their back.
Yeah,
or like not being able to see the stage because of the tall guy that's in front of you.
Well, see. That's me. So that works out nicely for me. I was the 6'4" asshole standing at the front. If you didn't like it, you could have gotten there earlier because I was standing in the same spot since before the opening act went on.
Like one of my best friends is his name's Mark. He's like 6'6".
Yeah,
he's that guy.
I have a buddy I've been to a lot of concerts with who. People have said he looks like my big brother. He's probably 6'6". He's at least 6'5", 6'6". And we've gone to shows together. And we were at a show at a club up in Scottsdale that doesn't exist anymore. Butch Walker played there, playing an acoustic show. And we're standing next to each other. And it's not that big a place, and it's not all that densely packed. And the lights go off at the start of the show, and immediately I notice someone stepping right next to us. and standing, kind of in our shadow. When the lights came up enough to look and see who it was Steven Tyler of Aerosmith.
Oh, wow.
Who kind of looked at me with this look like, please don't. And I smiled and nodded and then kind of ignored him. And I thought it was funny that he waited till the lights go out before he would walk out. And I think he was standing there because he would be less noticed in the shadow of these 6'4" and 6'6" guys who were there.
That's awesome.
He lasted about 5 songs before people started recognizing him, and he ended up in the balcony alone.
All right, man. I think it's about time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Final question. How about this goddamn weather, huh?
This is miserable, man. This is miserable. So I go to Pappy and Harriet's. I got a hotel in Palm Springs that I got in there in the afternoon before the show, and I thought, hey, I was staying right downtown in Palm Springs, which is a cool downtown. It's a cool city. And I thought, it'll be great. I can just walk around downtown, kill a couple hours before the show.
Yeah.
No. I walk out of the hotel, and I got to a Starbucks a block away and thought, well, good, I can get a drink that'll stave off the heat stroke before I just walk back to the hotel room.
It's insane.
Yes.
And some people, it's totally normal. This ain't normal.
This isn't normal.
No.
No.
I mean, you get triple digits in October. That's not totally unusual.
And
but 110?
It was either the day before I drove back from Orange County. In Orange County, it was 70s.
Yeah.
With lows in the 60s. It was amazing.
It was Orange County weather.
Yeah. And
SoCal weather.
then I think it was the day before I drove home. It was 117 here.
Yeah.
And then I drove home and it was 113 or 100.
It's stupid, man.
My God, it's October. Enough.
I love it every year. You get newbies that move out here, and beginning of the summer, they're like, "Oh, I'll take this over the humidity," and I get that. Humidity really sucks.
I know.
It can really suck.
Yes. I spent August in Savannah and Charleston 1 year. But I got the humidity thing.
No, it can really suck. But I tell people, when you've lived here a while, it's not like the one day where it's 118 or near 120. It's the length of the summer, and that's what's killing me right now. It's just it should be cooler.
Yeah.
It should be a little bit cooler. It should be a lot cooler in the morning and at night, and it's hitting 110. And I promise you, Politics Unplugged listeners, this is the last time on Politics Unplugged we'll be talking about the weather unless we bring in people to talk about climate change and policies.
Yeah. No.
But I just had to say, it was come on, man.
It's been miserable. Give us a break. Finally, please.
You know what? Next week we'll bring Royal on. Fuck this.
We can do that.
We're going to bring Royal on next week. Royal Norman.
Then we can get the anchor from another station in town.
Let's not.
It's totally refreshing. We're all lying to you. It's a thing at the airport. It's exhaust at the airport.
Let's not.
Yeah, probably best.
Oh boy. All right. Well, with me checking my cell phone there, I think it's time for me to and you to wrap this baby up until next week.
Sounds good. I'll actually be here next week.
All right.
So we're good. Yeah.
All right.
See you then.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.